3 days ago I had a minor accident and injured my wrist. Although it turned out to be just a sprain, at the time the pain was intense. My wife, Mia, 45, and I, 41, were home together when it happened. I asked her to drive me to the nearest ER to get it checked, as I was worried I might have fractured it. Initially, Mia was reluctant and dismissed my concerns, insisting I just put some ice on it, but I managed to convince her to take me. During the drive, she received an urgent call from her ex-partner, Eric, 44. Without hesitation, she told me to get out of the car because she needed to address the emergency. We were just a few minutes from the hospital, so I pleaded with her to at least drop me off before leaving. She refused, insisting I figure it out, and drove away. Despite the pain, I walked the remaining distance to the ER, a 15-minute trek that would have only been a couple of minutes by car. The heat made the walk unbearable, and the pain seemed to intensify with every step. Once I arrived, I called my stepdaughter, April, 22, and explained what had happened. Within 20 minutes, she showed up and later drove me home. April is Mia's daughter from her previous relationship with Eric, but she and I share a close bond. She's called me Dad for years, since I've been a significant part of her life, raising her from the age of 7. Mia and Eric split when April was 4, and their connection has always been weak. April was furious when she learned her mother had left me stranded, especially since I was in so much pain. Even after the doctor confirmed it was just a sprain, April insisted that Mia's actions were inexcusable. I didn't argue against her feelings because, frankly, I was also upset. When we got home, my wrist was placed in a splint, and I was told I'd need to wear it for 3 to 4 weeks. So despite Mia's initial dismissal, it wasn't nothing. April stayed with me to help out, but I could sense she was troubled. Later that evening, when Mia finally returned home, April gathered all of us, Mia, our twin daughters, 15, and me, in the living room. She had an announcement to make, and I couldn't have been prouder of her for standing up for what she believed. She shared that her great-uncle's lawyer had recently contacted her, informing her of a significant inheritance she'd received. Her great-uncle, from Mia's side of the family, had passed away recently. April had been close to him due to their shared interests, and while we expected he might leave her something, none of us imagined it would be such a large amount. His wealth was substantial, and since he lost his wife and children in a tragic accident years ago, it made sense that he left most of his estate to April. As we congratulated her, April continued. She revealed that she had initially planned to share the inheritance with both me and Mia. However, after reflecting on recent events and how Mia had been acting for weeks, she decided to split it with only me. April explained that she didn't feel Mia was treating any of us fairly, and while harsh, her observations weren't far off. Eric had returned to town a few months ago and had been reconnecting with Mia under the guise of wanting to spend more time with April. Since Mia and Eric had remained somewhat cordial over the years, she tried to facilitate these meetings. However, April wasn't particularly interested in seeing her biological father. Their relationship had always been distant, primarily due to Eric's choices. After Eric and Mia's breakup, Eric moved away for work, and their long-distance arrangement failed. His relationship with April deteriorated as a result. While he initially visited her on alternate weekends, his growing career demands meant those visits became less frequent. Eventually, months would pass without him seeing her, and even when he did, the visits were brief. April understandably resented him for his absence. Over time, as Mia and I became a couple, April began to see me as her father. I treated her as if she were my own, and it created a strong bond between us. Eric, on the other hand, tried to maintain a relationship with April on his terms, prioritizing his career and personal life. Now that April is an adult, she's firmly set in her ways and has no interest in rebuilding a connection with him. Eric's attempts to reconnect were met with indifference. He had opportunities to prioritize his daughter in the past, but he chose otherwise. It's no surprise that April, now independent and clear about her boundaries, has little patience for him. April's decision to allocate her inheritance to me wasn't just about the events of that day. It was a culmination of years of feeling supported and valued by me, in contrast to her strained relationship with her mother and Eric. While the situation with Mia remains tense, I'm grateful for the bond April and I share and proud of the person she's become. A few days ago, I had an argument with my wife, Mia, that escalated far beyond what I anticipated. Eric, her ex, has recently re-entered our lives and has been working with Mia to rebuild his relationship with their daughter, April. Initially, Mia acted as a mediator, helping Eric and April reconnect. However, things seem to have shifted, and now Mia has redirected most of her attention to Eric. While I've tried to be understanding, the situation has started to weigh heavily on me. Both Mia and Eric work in the same industry, and they've been planning to launch a business together. Mia has repeatedly assured me that their interactions are strictly professional and platonic, but the frequency of her visits to Eric's place, twice a week, makes me uncomfortable. I'm not generally the jealous type, but this has started to feel like too much. We've argued about it several times, and the incident where Mia left me on the way to the hospital has only made it harder for me to move past my feelings of distrust. When April announced that she would share her inheritance with me and exclude Mia, it created a tense atmosphere. Mia immediately jumped up and accused me of manipulating April against her and Eric. Instead of addressing April directly, who had made the decision independently, Mia turned her anger on me, claiming I was overreacting and insecure. She insisted that leaving me that day was necessary because of a business emergency involving a potential investor Eric had contacted her about. According to her, my injury wasn't as serious as I made it out to be, and she accused me of exaggerating to make her look bad in April's eyes. At first, I was too stunned to respond, but when she said I might have replaced April's father in her life, but I could never replace her, I couldn't hold back. I told her she was the one behaving irresponsibly and irrationally. I pointed out that if she thought my frustration was overblown simply because she spends so much time at her ex's house, then maybe the issue lay with her, not me. I even said that most people in my situation would have already left, but I had stayed because I trusted her, trust that I no longer felt she deserved. Implying that she might be unfaithful only fueled the fight further, and the argument quickly escalated to the point where we were yelling and cursing at each other. April eventually stepped in to separate us, trying to calm us both down. Afterward, Mia left the house without saying a word to me, only telling April that she would stay with a friend for a few days. She returned late that night to pack a few things and left again without speaking to me. 3 days have passed since that fight, and I feel awful about how things unfolded. April has been staying with me to help out, especially since I've been limited in what I can do with my wrist in a splint. She's been working from home during this time because she knows I'd be alone until the twins return from their after-school activities. While she hasn't complained and seems happy to help, I can't shake the feeling that I've intruded on her privacy and forced her to take on a responsibility that shouldn't be hers. This is Mia's role, but she isn't here, and that guilt weighs on me. April keeps telling me that I shouldn't blame myself for the situation. She believes Mia created this mess and insists that I've been remarkably patient and reasonable despite everything. But I can't help feeling responsible. If I had kept my temper in check, maybe we could have resolved things without everything spiraling out of control. I want to clarify a few things. First, I'm not criticizing Eric for prioritizing his career. I was simply stating the facts. Eric didn't prioritize April when she needed him most, and it's not my fault that I now have a stronger bond with her. I put in the time and effort, and he didn't. While I understand he's trying to rebuild that relationship now, if April isn't interested, he can't force her to change her mind, even with Mia's help. Second, while I've considered the possibility of Mia and Eric having an affair, I've avoided dwelling on it because the idea is too painful to confront. I'm not oblivious. I know there's a chance something more might be happening. But lacking concrete proof, I've chosen not to accuse her directly. I realize this approach isn't healthy, but the alternative, facing the possibility head-on, is almost unbearable. At this point, I'm trying to take things one day at a time. The uncertainty and emotional toll of everything have left me drained, but I'm doing my best to hold it together for my family. Lately, I've been struggling with feelings of suspicion and insecurity, which I've tried discussing with Mia a few times. Each time, she's managed to reassure me that nothing inappropriate is going on between her and Eric. She insists they're simply friends, and that their interactions are necessary since they share a daughter. Over the years, their continued contact never bothered me, until recently. Now it's started to feel uncomfortable, almost like it's crossing a boundary. Admitting this makes me feel immature, like a teenager, but I can't ignore it any longer. Deep down, I suspect something might be happening between them, though I've been reluctant to acknowledge it. But now, I think I've reached a point where I have to face it. Update 1. I had a long conversation with April about everything I've been feeling. First, I apologized for the inconvenience I've caused her. It's been a week since Mia walked out, and April has been staying with me, helping out while I recover from my wrist injury. Since it's my right hand, I've been unable to manage most tasks, and April has stepped in to take care of the household work. On top of that, she's been working from home, which I know must be stressful for her. Even though I've had to adjust to working remotely as well, I no longer have to worry about daily chores, all thanks to April. I told her how guilty I felt because none of this should be her responsibility. Mia should be here taking care of things. April reassured me, saying it wasn't a big deal. She reminded me that when she was younger, I went above and beyond for her, even though I wasn't biologically obligated to. She said this was the least she could do in return. Her words really hit me, and I couldn't hold back my emotions. I ended up crying and sharing everything I'd been bottling up, including my fears about Mia being unfaithful with Eric. I told her how much time Mia and Eric had been spending together, and how it didn't feel right anymore. I expected April to brush it off, tell me I was overthinking, and insist that Mia would never cheat on me. But instead, she stayed quiet, and that silence said it all. After a moment, April admitted she wasn't sure if Mia was cheating. However, she was certain they weren't discussing ways to repair Eric's relationship with her, as Mia had claimed. She explained that for the past few months Eric had barely contacted her. No messages, no phone calls. She'd wanted to bring it up with me earlier, but hesitated because she didn't want to create more conflict or make things awkward. Hearing this crushed me. If Eric wasn't even making an effort to reach out to his own daughter, then everything Mia had told me about helping Eric reconnect with April had been a lie. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply told April that I felt like the only way forward was to file for divorce. I've reached a point where I can no longer tolerate Mia's closeness with Eric, especially since she clearly doesn't care how it affects me. At this stage, I don't even know if their supposed business venture is real or just an excuse to spend time together. Everything feels so uncertain now, and I'm too old to deal with this kind of chaos. I've tried to be patient and understanding, doing everything I could for the sake of our relationship because I loved Mia. But even love has its limits. I admitted to April that I didn't have anyone else I could confide in about this. My mom, who I was very close to, passed away a few years ago, and my dad hasn't been in my life since I was a child. April listened and seemed to understand, and for that, I'm incredibly grateful. She may not be my biological daughter, but she's been a better source of support than I could have ever hoped for. While my twins are still too young to grasp what's happening, April is older and more mature. She told me that if I truly wanted a divorce, I should go through with it without worrying about anyone else's feelings. She reminded me that no one else is prioritizing my well-being, so the least I can do is put myself first. Besides, even if I confront Mia, there's no guarantee she'll be honest about what's been happening. April's advice was that it's time for me to remove myself from this toxic situation before it causes me even more pain. Despite being much younger than me, her words were thoughtful and grounded. Exactly what I needed to hear. I've started researching divorce attorneys and plan to move forward with filing soon. In the meantime, I'm taking things one step at a time. If Mia comes back home at any point, I plan to sit down with her and explain my decision. My mind is made up, and although I know this won't be easy, considering how things have been since Eric returned, I feel like this will actually be simpler than what I've already endured. Update 2. Hi, it's been a rough week. 2 weeks ago, Mia walked out, and she still hasn't returned. With April's help, I got in touch with a lawyer, and a few days ago, I officially filed for divorce. Mia and I haven't blocked each other. We've just stopped communicating entirely. I sent her a message explaining that, given the current situation, it's clear we're no longer compatible as a couple. I pointed out how her priorities have shifted since Eric came back and expressed that I can't continue in this marriage. Writing that message was emotionally painful, but I knew it was necessary to take this step for myself. I poured my heart into it, yet she didn't respond. Since there wasn't much else to say, I decided to let it go. Today, I believe she was served with the divorce papers as she contacted April. She told April she would sign them in a couple of days after consulting her lawyer about the terms. Apparently, she had already reviewed the agreement herself and was fine with everything I proposed. It hurt to hear that Mia, despite receiving my personal message, didn't have the courtesy to reply directly. Instead, she chose to communicate with me through April. This indifference only reinforced my belief that something was going on with her and Eric. In the past, no matter how severe our arguments were, divorce was never on the table. She always fought to keep us together, and frankly, I didn't think it would ever come to this, but here we are and there's no turning back now. On a brighter note, my daughters have been incredibly supportive. The twins, despite their age, seem to understand what I'm going through and have shown nothing but kindness and empathy. April, as always, has been mature about the situation and even helped me break the news to the twins after I filed. To my surprise, the twins were very understanding and reassured me that they were on my side. I couldn't have asked for more. Having all three of my daughters by my side gives me the strength to handle everything else. Compared to losing Mia, this situation doesn't feel like such a big deal anymore. Thankfully, since the twins are almost 16, we likely won't need to go through a formal custody battle. We'll work with a lawyer to set up an arrangement that works for everyone. For now, the twins don't want to spend any time with Mia. Their resentment is strong, though I hope this will change with time. Update 3. 5 days after my last update, Mia came back home with the signed divorce papers. She isn't contesting anything, and once the waiting period ends, the divorce will be finalized. Since we'd already hashed out the details with our lawyers, everything was ready to move forward. She hadn't called to say she'd be stopping by, so I was surprised to see her at the door. I still let her in. Mia explained that she was only there to collect her belongings because she was running out of clothes and didn't want to keep borrowing from her friend. It was the weekend, so April and the twins were home. During the entire time Mia was there, the girls kept their distance, barely acknowledging her. It was obvious they were ignoring her on purpose. Mia didn't say a word to any of us until she had finished packing. Just before leaving, she finally addressed the girls. She told them she understood they were upset about everything happening between her and me, but insisted that we were both going through personal struggles they couldn't fully understand at their age. However, she reminded them that she was still their mother and believed they would eventually see her side of things. No one responded, not the girls and not me. Even though Mia was completely wrong about both of us going through personal struggles, none of us wanted to create more drama. We stayed silent, and she left. The moment Mia drove away, April started venting. She was livid that Mia still refused to take responsibility for what had happened. April pointed out that the only problems I had were the ones Mia created. She said Mia's words about both of us being at fault were absurd because there was no side to this situation that required understanding. Mia was in the wrong, plain and simple. April also felt Mia missed an opportunity to apologize. Instead, she further alienated herself from her daughters by pretending she was justified in her actions. Even the twins, who had been quietly observing, expressed their frustration. Despite the tension, I'm proud of how my daughters handled the situation with dignity. They didn't argue or lash out, even though Mia's behavior clearly upset them. It's obvious she's deluded herself into thinking her actions were acceptable, even though they've cost her family. Update 4. It's been 6 months since my last update, and the divorce was finalized a few months ago. I've started therapy, something April encouraged me to try. At first I was skeptical, but it's actually been helpful. From what I've heard, Mia and Eric went ahead with their business plans shortly after the divorce. Maybe they were being truthful about that all along, but I'm almost certain they're now in a relationship. Knowing this would have crushed me months ago, but now I feel indifferent. I gave 12 years of my life to Mia, and she chose to throw it away. That's her loss, not mine. All that matters is that my daughters and I are doing well. I'm happy we're building a new life together, and that's what truly counts.